Geek Insider presents Geek Speak with Matthew Harris and Meredith Loughran. We cover entertainment, news, and tech with special guest appearances. So sit back and enjoy as we geek out together right now.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Meredith Loughran with Geek Speak, and this is, today's a little bit different. We don't have Matthew Harris today, and we actually have Rob Andersin and our special guest, George Dawkins II. We're going to be talking about the 8-page challenge. And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, this is the road to New York Comic Con 2021, shall we? We need to update this a little bit, but let me drop down this our overlay here and welcome George. How are you?
How are you? I'm good.
You know what? I'm going to move you over here and I'm going to kind of put you up on the big screen and let you introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is George Dawkins II. I am a participant in the 8-page challenge. My contribution to the challenge is a flash fiction piece called The Black Knight. And that's why I'm here today.
So tell us a little bit about the 8-page challenge. When did that kind of get on your radar and what prompted you to participate?
It started when I met Buddy at New York Comic Con of last year. I met him at a panel. His name Buddy Scalera. He's the founder of Comic Book School, the founder of this challenge. I met him last year at New York Comic Con at a panel called Create a Connection. After the panel, I emailed Buddy, and he added me to this group, a group of other people who I met at the panel who are creators like me. The purpose of this group was to participate in the 8-page challenge created by Buddy, where people and creators, they team up, artists and writers team up to create comics that are 8-page each. I was going to do an 8-page comic, but COVID happened, and this really affected the whole challenge actually. Because I think we knew that New York Comic Con, it was going to be canceled because of the pandemic and everything. But I feel like we were preparing ourselves for it. We knew it was coming, and I like how we stayed connected with each other. We encouraged each other to continue doing our work. At some point, Buddy created a second challenge called the Flash Fiction Challenge to go with the 8-page challenge, because it's easier for an artist to make one image instead of, an 8-page comic. It's easier for them to illustrate that. This is where my project came in, The Black Knight. It's based off a short story I wrote during my sophomore year of college. And the way the Flash Fiction Challenge works is that you have to put a story that's 250 to 500 words paired with one image by an artist. And that's how I'm a part of this. And we have an anthology coming out December 29th.
That's really exciting. So when you started with this process with your script, did you start off with prose first, or was it you had a script in mind, and how did that work for you?
Well, I had the script in my own mind, actually. I have all these ideas in my head, and whenever the challenge came up, I just applied one of them to that challenge. And it really came like in clutch for me, Like I was happy that I was able to participate in such a challenge, especially during a pandemic. That's what's so incredible, that we were able to release this anthology inspired the pandemic and everything. Like, I'm really proud of our group, the Comic Book School.
I think it's a testament to people who really want to get things done. It's one thing to have a good talking game, but it's another thing to actually do it. Right. And when you have a group of people who are dedicated to getting something done, you can move mountains and stuff. So that's really a testament to Buddy Scalera and what he's doing with Comic Book School.
Right.
Now, how many projects would you say you have under your belt as far as comic book credits or even writing credits and things? Because I'm new. I'm a newbie comic creator. I'll have 2 pages in Luke Stone's book. I'm working on my own. In fact, I'm trying to get some lettering done, which is the first time I've ever done that. And I'm like, well, why not? It's my first book. I'm going to try and learn as much of the process as I can. So, like, how many for you was this kind of a first time in? Do you have quite a few credits? How does that work?
I actually have my own books on Amazon, comic books. I have my own comic called The Desert Fox. It's it's like, long story short, it's a pastor who becomes a vigilante in Jerusalem. And I have 4 issues available on Amazon, and I have a Facebook page under The Desert Fox Comic.
Okay. All right. So you are kind of a seasoned creator then when it comes to this.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, I'm still getting into the game myself. I'm still learning the game actually through Comic Book School. I feel like I'm learning the business through this group, and I can't thank Buddy enough for that.
And how did that work with getting matched up with an artist then for your work?
The thing about that is, I think, like, the way it was set up was we connected with people we met at the panel at New York Comic Con last year. And I don't remember seeing the artist who did my flash fiction piece. His name is Philip Burnett. Shout out to Philip. He's amazing. I don't remember seeing him at the panel, but he was in the group, so I was able to connect with him. And that's how we were able to work together.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, because with again, with my first one, it was kind of funny because there were times when I wanted to, like, kind of yell and shake Rob down because I'm like, how do I do this? And he just gave me like the most minimal answer possible, which forced me to go out and do some research. But thankfully, I have kind of fallen into a group of creators who are collaborative and helpful, because I've been in groups, and I do want to ask you about some of the groups that you might be in. I've been in groups where they kind of tore new people down. They're like, you're not, you're an idiot because maybe you're not asking the right questions. Like, well, I'm new, so of course I'm going to have these idiot questions, and so I just removed myself from that because I don't need that in my life. So it's really nice to see Comic Book School where they're nurturing the creative process and kind of matching people up to learn. What would you say in 2020, because we have had to pivot? What was one of the biggest takeaways for you in 2020 as far as the creative process, what you might have learned through Comic Book School?
Well, first of all, I want to say sorry to hear what happened to you with your experience with the group. I'm sorry to hear that.
It's Rob.
But yeah, my biggest takeaway from 2020 is that, well, since we were in the pandemic, we couldn't go anywhere or do anything. It really just gave me time really to create more. Like, I was able to, like, sit down and write down every idea that I had. And, like, in the future, I'm definitely going to try to put those ideas out there. But it really just gave me time to sit down and think about all the things that I wanted to create. Like, I'm a writer. I'm not an artist. I'm a writer, by the way. And I write everything down. Every idea that I have, even if it's something small, like, I write it down. And the pandemic 2020 really gave me time to do that. And that's my biggest takeaway from 2020.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Now, have you also kind of broadened your horizons as far as what else you want to do in the comic book industry, as far as, because you're a writer, right? So therefore you do a little bit of editing on your own, hopefully, before you send it off to somebody.
Gotcha.
Have you tried things like lettering your own book, or have you tried art or flatting?
I can draw a little bit, but not on the scale of a comic book artist. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I guess the thing about this challenge is, since I participated in the Flash Fiction Challenge instead of the 8-page challenge. I feel like I've proven that I can't just write comics. I can write, a little bit of everything. Flash fiction, and that Flash fiction was based off a short story, so I can write short stories too. I can do it all. I feel like, any kind of writing for any type of story.
Yeah, I feel you. And you know what? We're wearing like Superman blue today, so
oh yeah,
we are right with the universe today. Rob, you want to pop in here for a second and say hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead, Asa. Feel free. I mean, you've already put the bus over me, so.
I have to say thank you, though, because if it makes me appreciate the process a little bit more. And it's kind of that, not that I'm taking my arm off to pat my own back or anything like that, but because I am getting an education, it's not being given to me, you know? And as long as I'm guided in the right direction, I'm okay with that. So I don't mean to, I do want to throw you under the bus a little bit.
Well, there's a reality to the situation. Meredith is the comics noob, and she's been calling herself that. And when someone asks you a question, you have two choices when you know. You could tell them what they want to know, and it's going to overwhelm them. It's just going to be too much. You're not going to get it. You're simply not. As someone who's sat in the panels, including buddies, for over a decade, I'll tell you can't absorb it all at once. You really can't. So when you ask the question, I would always say the bare minimum and tell you the important thing you forgot was I told you to go ask other people how they did it. Because that's the moment where you find your own style. Because when you go, oh, wow, that person does it this way and this person does it that way, I kind of like this from them and that from them, and suddenly you're off to the races. You don't want to ever kind of just look at one person and be like, I'm going to be them. It's dangerous because when you try to be them, you forget they're already there. No one can be Stan Lee. I see someone, I'm gonna be the next Stan Lee. It's impossible. It is impossible to be the next Stan Lee. Everything's different now. But there is a new Mark Millar, and he's doing all the stuff he's doing now. You know, Buddy Scalera still doing things that are changing the industry, including this challenge.
Right.
You know, like George said, this survived the pandemic. How many things could be said that did that? Really, like, take the inventory of that moment and realize, hey, that's something huge. You know, so it's not that I don't want to help, especially Meredith, and she knows this. I try to take a back seat. Now, this year, I did realize that my back seat was a little bit too back in certain circumstances because people didn't ask for help. Meredith's not that person. Meredith would come and ask me, okay, I learned this. What does this mean? And I would tell her, and she'd be like, oh. I was like, yeah, and in Converse, you could do this. And she was like, oh, like today. I saw her, she was doing a video, and I was in the middle of doing like 10 things. And I just looked at the screen, and I saw her lettering, and I was like, put a stroke behind it. And at first, I don't think she understood what I was trying to say, because until you try it, you don't know what you might know what a stroke is, but you don't know what and for those who don't know what a stroke is, by the way, with lettering, it is basically a border. It is a border around a letter. So I was telling her to make hers because she's a black and white comic, and I do like the lettering choice you chose, actually. I actually did like it. I was looking at it. Aside from the Z, you have to remember it goes Z. So you have something in the bridge up here, and then you have something. I'm going to do it reverse, but in my world, it's actually different. But since it's mirror image, you have it here. You don't want to start here and go there. You want the eyes to go there because that turns the page. But if you add a stroke to it, the letters would pop better. And the minute she tried it, she was like, "Oh, I get it now." And you need those moments. And there are a lot of teachers who will be like, listen, just shut up and do what I say. And that's the group she was in.
Well, see, and that was neat because when he said stroke, and I was just like, I'm thinking stroke because when I make boxes and stuff like that, obviously, you have those strokes. But for lettering up, it didn't even occur to me unless I'm making memes. So when he said that with the white, I was like, oh, that makes sense. And I tried it. And, so there are a lot of questions and things, and that's what I think a lot of new creators need is that mentorship where they're not giving away all of the answers, and they kind of make you experiment a little bit and go out there and say, let me give this a shot. But again, a testament to Comic Book School and what they're doing with the 8-page challenge, because I think that separates, to put an old quote, the men from the boys. You're either going to do it or you're not. You're going to follow through or you're going to make excuses. And the idea that they've put together this anthology and brought creators together is a testament to doing something and showing progress and delivering on that. So I don't know how much insight you have as far as when that might be delivered, between Rob and George. Maybe you guys can answer that. When can we look forward to this anthology? And then we'll get back into what more about the 8-page challenge and what Comic Book School does, and maybe when they're starting their next class. But yeah.
Well, oh, sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
As far as I know, like I haven't been able to make as many meetings because of work, but I just know that December 29th is when the anthology will be released. It will be available to download for free. And I know we're planning for our next 8-page challenge for next year. And that's as far as I know. But Rob might know more than me.
I mean, you basically got it. I mean,
Okay.
December 29th, there'll be a big to-do about releasing it finally. It's going to be out there for the world to see. Very proud of that moment. Can't wait to get to it. Let's see. Outside of that, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's trying to get to the awareness at this point, because even at the beginning of this, Meredith has probably heard me talk about this from the background so much, but when you're only talking about it from the background, you don't always get the time to give it the due it needs. For those who don't know, there wouldn't be a Comic Book Advocates here. Let's make this a better shot. We wouldn't have Comic Book Advocates today, which is now the branch of Geek Insider for the comic books, without Buddy's school. So this is a huge, important thing. And when I went into this, I wanted to do something unique. I told an 8-page story with 8 different artists, or at least that was the goal. Because of the pandemic, like George said, nothing became easy. There were 2 artists who flat out backed out because it wouldn't be released at Comic-Con. They flat out said, well, it's not going to New York Comic-Con. I don't want to be part of it anymore. And I get that. No hostility. They were upfront and honest. I had 2 artists who got sick in the middle of the project who could not fulfill their part to it. So I wound up having to take one artist, Martha Schwartz, and spread her over 2 pages. And I put up my script as a piece of art for one of it. And I had a friend, Chris Mad, come in the last minute, and he just did the sketches for a page. He's like, how's this? I'm like, perfect. Like 2 weeks later, he's like, whatever happened? Did you want me to ink it? I was like, no, I'm using it just like that. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, it's the creative process. The entire thing is my creative journey. And at that part of the story, I'm starting a new arc in my own creative journey, which is also part of this where I'm helping people like Meredith. And I've seen the mentors she's talking about, the people who like go down your throat. And instead, I tell you things to read, because I want you to have those more in-depth conversations with you. And I don't want you to fill your head with the things I think I'm right about, because I had a lot of coming up. There are a few people I would consider a mentor. Buddy was a great one, and I have no regrets over that. There were other ones that wound up filling my head. Like one of the worst pieces of advice, fake it till you make it, is still to me one of the most damaging things that I ever heard. And it should be study it and earn it. That's really the quote it should be. Study it, be out there, be able to listen. People like Meredith are going to go a lot further than people who just run into the industry and claim victory. And again, I'm the next Stan Lee. How many comics have you put out? None. But my first comics is going to be a legend.
Yeah,
that does not.
And I want to imitate Rob just a little bit, because like, hey, Rob, how do you do this? Read books. But I just have to read more books.
No, I tell her the books, though. In fairness, I tell her the books, and she's like, just tell me. Just tell me. This is like a simple thing. Don't tell me to read a book. And I'll be like, fine, it's this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the 8-page challenge really is just it's the birth of a creators connection, where Buddy actually gets all these creators to come together and talk about what they do in a room to each other. And it is sadly not turning around enough projects. And not enough people are working together. And me and Meredith talked about this. It's sometimes you get artists who are like, well, I want to get paid for all my work. Yeah. But they haven't quite earned the right to get paid for everything, at least not the rates they want. Like if someone came up to me and said, hey, $10, I'll do a page. I just want to make a little something. I would make a deal with that's how I made my Monsters book. He did the book for $20 a page because he wanted practice. I've had a couple creators that I've gotten together early on, because there is and George will know what I'm talking about, and you're learning it right now, Meredith.
I really am. Yeah, learning the business right now.
Yeah, the sequence in pages are so critical in comics, and a lot of artists who are new don't understand it. And I say it all the time. The writer gives the education to the actual artist on how to tell a story, and it's a weird transformation between writer and artist, where, and I'm sure you've dealt with this, George, where you kind of learn something while you're explaining something, and you're like, why didn't I put that in my script? and your next script is
Yeah,
better
yeah.
for it because you already said what you had to say. You know,
Right.
when I kick off my scripts, I get my artists coming back to me thanking me 90% of the time because it's so inundated with little tidbits, little things that I hide in there. And you know, you always want to work with your artists. You ask them, well, how much control do you need? Do you want as much control as I can give you, where I give you prose and you set it in place and then we talk about it? Or do you need me to write panel by panel? And you involve your artist, you know, because comics are collaborative. And when you collaborate with someone, it shows. When you're fighting behind the scenes or just accepting things, it shows. So it really is one of those things. And to the whole like editing, I mean, we just saw Cyberpunk 2077. They lost $2 billion, they were saying, because of it, because of stocks and stuff, because the company lost $2 million between the two companies involved, lost it in stocks, and Sony lost some money over it because of all the glitches. And that's an editor thing. I heard about that, yeah. You know, it's just, that's how you edit. You have to be an editor and you have to take your projects seriously. When you send them out to the world, you don't get a chance to get them back. Right. You know, especially with a comic book. No one can give an update to a comic book. George can't just go, here, put this update in your comic.
Yeah, it's too late. Yeah, it's too late.
Like the printed word is really a vicious mistress because once she's out there with the information, you never get it back. Even if you release another edition of the book, that first edition's always out there. Yeah. And it's always willing to come back and be like, look how Rob screwed this up.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Like Rob's talking all this shit. Look at his first book.
That's my biggest fear. Like I end up putting something out there and it's too late for me to fix it. Like that's my biggest fear as a writer.
You can't. You got to put out and you got to say that's me then. This is me.
Yeah.
You have to have that courage to be able to say, hey, that's just me starting. Just wait how I'm going to be in 6 months, in a year and a half, you know. And George, for the events that we had, these meetings, knows that it was also a way for us to spiritually meet as creators and refuel. We've gone through this whole 2020, and it's not been an easy time. I mean, we don't get to go to cons. We don't get to meet up with you. We don't get to go to Creators Connection. You know, we don't get to sit in that room and just talk about stuff and talk to each other. There are friends that are lifelong friends now that if I say anything's wrong, 5 of them from that panel will message me within 24 hours to check on me, to make sure I'm okay, because we all stayed connected. We're talking 5 years later, going on 10 years with some of the people. Like Buddy remembers when I first started coming around, he talks about it all the time. He's like, I remember when he came in and just watched the panels. Didn't even say anything. I guess this kind of ugly is hard to forget.
So I guess the next question that I want to ask, because you know you're talking about a group of people who've really worked together and kind of been through this process for a few years. How does a newbie come into the group? How do they get involved? Because a lot of times, you know, a lot of times, let me just, preface that by saying a lot of times when a new person comes into a room and, you know, there's a group of people who are already like pals and they know how to talk to each other and things like that, it can feel a little overwhelming for a new person to come into that because it feels very much, I don't want to say cliquish because I don't know the group necessarily. I'm getting introduced to people little by little. And I don't get that sense that it's just like, oh, well, you haven't paid your dues yet, you know? So how would a new person come into the group? Is there a registration process? You know, where can we find this?
I remember emailing Buddy after the panel. That's the whole reason how I'm involved in this. I think he was expecting me because the panel itself was called Creative Connection. And I met him there, and I guess he was expecting everyone he met there to email him after. But that's how I got into it. And then after that, he added me to WordPress. You know what that is? It's like I guess where you can create groups to be in, and that's just how I got involved, by emailing Buddy.
Okay. But did you ever feel less than? when you join the group, because again, a lot of people, and we have a comment here. I don't know who you are. Your name's not showing up. It is intimidating to go into a new group because you don't know what the missteps are. You don't know what's accepted necessarily, and it's always best, I think, to kind of come in and sit down, shut up, and observe and learn.
Yeah, I understand completely. It is intimidating. I guess you just have to have the courage to, I guess, put yourself out there. But it is important to, just sit and observe, especially if you're new, because that way you get a sense of what this new group you're entering into, what they're all about. I feel like that's what I did. And in fact, I think Rob knows this. When we had meetings, sometimes I wouldn't even show my face. I would just go in through the phone. And I guess later on, I started showing my face more. But through those meetings, when I was faceless, I was learning everything about the group and the people involved, and it gave me the courage later on to show my face and be more open.
And I think to George's point and to what you're asking, I think Buddy has built something that defies that clique, you don't belong. Instead, he actually creates something that says, hey, everyone belongs here. There is no one person that doesn't belong part of this group. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has somewhere to be within this industry. And I think it's that energy that Buddy has created around himself that is inspired. Remember, comic book advocates, and I can't stress this enough, would not be a thing without Buddy Scalera. What Buddy put together encouraged that to become a thing that has helped thousands of creators. Just from his inspiration of who he is and how he ran things. So that's always been the standard bearer for me as we did things in this industry, including how I act professionally and expect other people to act professionally. I've always thought about that. Well, what would Buddy say? Because I came up that way, and I don't want to ever betray where I've been and where I'm going in life, if that makes sense. So for me, it was always living up to that pedestal that Buddy creates around him that everyone wants to live up to. You don't want to let Buddy down. So you work really hard to do right by this industry and help other people, because that's what he does. He's a pay it forward type of dude for certain, and he inspires other people to do the same thing. He has professionals coming to hang out with us. I'm talking, I've seen Jim Lee show up at the after event parties. I'm seeing people who you would not necessarily expect to just suddenly pop up in the middle of us at the after party once New York Comic Con shut down. And I've even talked to Buddy about trying to get him to come down to Florida and even let him bunk with me while he's in a hotel. And I'm like, if it cuts the cost, it cuts the cost, because I think the message needs to be brought down here in Florida. Because you want to talk, I always say this, I don't think comics are a community. I have said this, and I will stand by that. I don't believe comics are a community, but I believe what Buddy Scalera has made is a community of creators. And that's the difference. I think that there are pockets where there are creators. And like you said, there's no admission here. There's no, oh, you're not good enough because you haven't done blah. There's no such thing with Buddy Scalera. If anything, Buddy's the exact opposite. Buddy's like, well, tell me what you want to create. And he puts you right on the spot. You're in that room. And I remember the first year I was in that room at the Creators Connection. I hadn't done anything yet. I didn't even have a business card. I didn't have a piece of paper to write my name. I didn't know what to expect. I felt like a total, idiot, oh my God, what am I doing here? I must be in the wrong place. And everyone around was so supportive because that's what Buddy made it. And everyone else was just like me. And I started to realize this, and I'm going to tell everyone who's watching this secret, and don't tell anyone I told you this. But people who create comic books are just human beings. They are not mythical gods. They are not special people who have special dust sprinkled on them at birth. They're just people. And if you start to realize that and you start hanging out with these people, you suddenly realize, hey, I'm making it a bigger deal than it is. What I need to do is start actually talking to these people and learning. The minute you get your mindset to learn from everyone around you, I keep my mouth shut during the panels and I'll ask questions. And Buddy came up to me one panel because I'll help him when I'm at New York Comic Con if I'm not tabling. I'll hand out supplies and all that. And Buddy came up to me and he's like, thank you for asking the questions you did. I know you knew the answers, but they were good questions. Because sometimes it does take someone like us in the audience, even though we know the answer, to ask the question that everyone's there to ask. Because they don't want to raise their hand because you are these
Yeah.
panels. I can't. This is a room full of human beings.
Right.
Like it's like a college. Like when you see the college panels that they do, or all the people are in there. You don't want to be the idiot who says, like you said, because online there are people out there who will like, the hell's wrong with you? Why would you choose Photoshop this version released on this date with this add-on? You're an amateur. Get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say to that is like, always remember who's saying that.
Yeah.
Go and look at their profile, see what they've released. Because there's no professional I know who's ever spoken to me that way. I've had professionals critique my work. I absolutely have had them say, this could be better. You should be doing this. Don't try to do this. I get you want to be clever, but clever doesn't always work. Try to fix this. And instead of having hurt feelings, I learned from it and I got better at everything I did because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, it's how the thing, like no one should ever make you feel bad. They should make you feel like they care. And I say that all the time. If I'm editing something for you, it's because I care.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute you give me static, I'll be like, okay, you win. Because I don't lose if unless you're part of Terraform or Meredith who has the lettering and I'm helping her out. You're not going to have me come down on you with the really close eye to detail until you prove to me you can take what I'm giving you and learn from it. Because I'm not trying to be. It actually takes me less effort to not say anything. It is so much easier to say, "Hey, cool book, dude. Cool book." Walk away. Oh my God, you see that shit? And that's what a lot of people do. I don't do that. I give my opinion, and if someone puts me the brakes on me and tells me, I mean, I've seen, and I've talked to Meredith about this with lettering. I've seen people letter books where the stomach was talking because they messed up. Tail was
no.
So now I'm telling them, I'm like, look, I was like, is this a character? Is the stomach a character? Am I being introduced to the stomach? And they're like, no, the stomach's not a character. I was like, but look, the tail goes to the stomach, and I can't stress this enough. They told me in print.
I want to ask George. George, though. Did you know that he was this crazy about tails? As a writer?
A little bit. I could tell from the conversations we had, like, in the meetings. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Because I think, well, maybe... Is that... Okay, so throwing it back to you, George, as a writer, because I'm a writer too, but I wanted to hear what your answer is. Mm-hmm. How important is it for you to know that part of it, the lettering part? Because you're writing the prose, you're kind of giving the direction to the artist. Mm-hmm. You know, when it comes to lettering, do you pay attention to stuff like that?
I'm starting to do that more and more, and I feel like this group has taught me to do that. To be like knowledgeable about every aspect of everything that involves with your work, and I just feel like. Yeah, I do need to know that a little bit more. It would be good to know every little aspect, such as the lettering, and that's definitely something I'm going to try to work on in the future. And this group has taught me that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to it that you know, when I first came in, and I kind of joke that I tripped into the comic book world because of Geek Insider, and the community basically said, "Oh, you're a creator," and they just grabbed me by the arms and just drugged me all the way in. I wasn't kicking and screaming that hard, but you know, maybe a little bit, because in my head for the longest time, I was like. Well, I kind of dabbled a little bit when I was a kid, you know, but never really thought of it as a pathway to do this for a living. And now that I'm in, I feel like I got bit by the bug. It's all I want to do. You know, I'm going to take all the stories that I wrote and go, oh, I can script that out. What would that look like? Let me go find an artist. Oh my God, you know, it's like, blah, blah.
It's your passion, so yeah, you're supposed to feel that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when did that bite you? When were you like, okay, I'm going to take this and I want to do comic books?
When I was 16, I believe. I'm 22 now, and I like to say that, like, inside I'm still 16 with 6 years experience because I'm 22 now. But that's really when I started getting all these ideas and like planning how I wanted to bring them to life. Mm-hmm. And I'm still in the process of doing that now. And being in this group just takes that further.
Very cool. I know, Rob, you've had, I mean, comic books was your gateway into reading. You're on mute.
Oh, yeah, you're on mute.
All right. Jax is home, spring break. Without comics, I might not have ever learned to read because of my dyslexia. And at the time, I was going to the Board of Education in New York City, which means I basically was on my own. And I had to fend off and be who I was until they decided I was getting in the way of their score grades at a better school. So they wanted to put me on the special bus. Short and narrow of the story is that turns out I had a genius IQ but very bad dyslexia. Like, to the point where they knew they didn't know how to fix it. It was that broken that they realized everything they'd done is so wrong that they literally told my parents, we can't help him. He's going to have to figure it out now, and we're going to have to tell him he's smart, because for the whole time we've been telling him he's not. And that's what comics can do, because I saw comics and I fell in love with it. Of course, I started off with a cartoon. Like a lot of people, the animated X-Men, the Stan one where he narrated it. I watched it. I loved it. And I wanted more of it, and there was no more. They only paid for a pilot episode. So I went to the comic book store, and I got this X-Men comic. I didn't know how to read it. So I got this thing called the dictionary, put it on the left side of the table, and on the right side I had the comic book, and I learned to read word by word because I was so inspired by comics, because these X-Men were rebels, and they didn't get along, and they were freaks, and there was something wrong with them. And as I started reading comics, even before I knew about the IQ test, I had gone from basically I was in like I had to have been I was in middle school, so I think it was in the second to last year of middle school. So I want to say it was 7th grade. I went from having a 3rd grade reading score to literally being able to reach college texts and manuals within 1 year. They had never seen a jump in actual reading that quickly, and it's because I fell in love with comics.
That's amazing. It's really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to read more and more. Comics have big words too.
Oh yeah, onomatopoeia. Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew I had the vocabulary from talking to adults, but I hadn't been able to put together what those words look like because of the dyslexia. Forcing myself to learn to read the way I did, I would never suggest as a teaching tool.
Yeah.
To use comics to educate, of course, but not to learn word by word. But doing the process, I can tell you that love of comics I never forgot. And I've wanted to be a writer of comics for years. And like many people, I had other things get in the way. There are constantly things I let get in the way. And I know that once I blew out my back at work, I was like, okay, now I'll have time to write comics more than I ever have, right? Because I'm going to be hurt. But I always expected to go back to work. And I figured I'd go back to work for a couple of years, be a famous comic book writer, and get to quit my job. We don't always get to write our own life stories. Just like our characters don't get to write theirs, we don't get to write ours. Right. And I wound up, not being able to return to work due to really bad spinal injury. And with all that extra time after seeing a therapist, because people were sort of worried about how much I was arguing about politics online. And no one knows me for politics now. But I can get into arguments about politics till the cows come home. And I was just bored. I wasn't putting my intellect anywhere. So the therapist said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're pissed off because you got hurt at work and you're being treated poorly. Everyone to get mad. It's like the only thing you're doing wrong is you're not finding a way to channel that energy into something positive. The more you make it negative, the more you say your back hurts. Find something that's positive. I was like, I like comics. He's like, okay, well, what can you do with comics? And I was like, let's find out. And I started advocating for him like Buddy did. 5 years later, now we have Backer Paws. We're part of Geek Insider as their comic book wing. You go on those journeys and you never know where you start. You never know where to go. But none of that would have been possible if I didn't keep my ears open, my eyes open, and my heart open to learning. And that's what it is. It's always a journey. I always said New York Comic Con was when I went back to school. It was my yearly school. It was when I learned new techniques. It reminded me to stop being stupid. And it reminded me to submit my books. I submitted a book and now I have a publisher. I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't gone to that New York Comic Con, like just last year. I should know better. And it's funny, you can be this person to everyone else, but when you're alone in your own head, you give yourself excuses. And that's why it's being part of a community like the Comic Book School. And you've seen this, the excuses fall on deaf ears because everyone else is like, yeah, but you could do this. And you're like, damn. You're right. And I should be looking at it like that. And you know what? I would tell people to do that. Why aren't I doing that? And that's why it's so important to be part of something like Comic Book School. And like George said, man, again, I can't stress this enough. It didn't end. No one ever talked about quitting. When we knew New York Comic Con wasn't going to be happening, it was like, well, how do we distribute the book next? What will be the next step? And we knew a month beforehand. I had heard, and Buddy had heard from probably the same source of people that it wasn't going to happen. And they were just trying to figure out how to make it happen. We knew it right away. It was going to be virtual. And then virtual, we couldn't even get panels. And I tried to help get panels. So we were locked out of even the metaverse version of New York Comic Con. So it could have been one of those break moments where everyone's like, well, we tried, right? No, that's not how this group did it. This group said, hell no, we won't quit. Mm-hmm. How do we still get the book out? And to this date, work's still being done. And then George knows this. I've been having trouble with my emails. I'm still making the connections. I'm still working around, I'm telling people, Facebook, talk to me on Facebook. I don't know what's wrong with my email. There's an octopus in it. I don't know. Something about it's wrong. But, you can just do that. And that's what was great about this 8-page challenge. And how do you get into it? I've invited you, Meredith. That's how you get into it. You get invited by people, and you're more than welcome to the next version of it. And Meredith, to her credit, was like, let me get some things off my plate. When will the next one really be starting? January. We're going to get done in December with what we're doing. We'll do a little bit of press in January. And by little, I mean a lot. But we're going to call it a little to not intimidate everyone. And we'll get the book out there. But as January starts, we'll start bringing in new teams. People like me will reach out to Meredith and go, hey, Meredith, why don't you come into this? Hey, Chris, come on. You used to go to this. Come on in. Chuck, come on, man. This would be good for you. You make some connections. We're all going to bring some more people in. It's going to be like Fight Club, except there's no rule about talking about it. In fact, you're encouraged to talk about it. Cool. But what you're collectively fighting is that wall that stops all of our creators. I'm not talking about the break-in wall. I'm talking about that first wall that you have to punch through to become a creator, and that's by creating. So many people out there, and Meredith knows this now with that 2 pages. Until you create it, you can't in your soul call you a creator. I know that when I was on the road, I would go to these things. I'd start off as press. And I remember, I want to be a creator. I want to be a creator. First time I got a table, I want to be a creator. I want to be a comic book creator. That's what I would tell people when they came to my table, despite having created a comic book. Mm-hmm. And I remember one day hearing in the middle of a pitch, I'm a comic book creator. I don't know when I decided I was a comic book creator, but I was. And I knew it was an undoubtable fact. I had 3 books. And even in my soul, in my core, I now knew it to be an unalienable truth that I was a comic book creator. No one could ever take that away from me. I could get shot in the back of the head. I could be, the IRS could find out that I'm Meredith's launderer. I do her laundry. They could, all that stuff could come out, and no one can ever take that away from me. And that's a powerful moment. Once you are a creator, it's something that no one can take away from you, and it's an amazing moment because it's a pride. And of course, the next thing you want is, well, what do I create next? What's going to be the next big thing? If you're like me, it's always what's next. You drop your book, you're proud of your book. You'll come onto these shows, you'll talk about these books, you'll get it out there. But what was most important is that you're constantly trying to evolve. And that's what Comic Book School is. It's coming together. It's telling you about that. Subscribe to the site, guys. For those who don't know, comicbookschool.com. It is literally in the description today. Subscribe to that site, to the show. It'll get you to be part of this. And no one's ever going to treat you poorly. Let me tell you, if Buddy saw someone treating someone poorly, they would not be invited back ever again. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, that's just it. Like, everyone is supportive to the point of almost nauseous. Like, people getting like, oh, come on, we're too nice to each other. Someone throw a punch. Like someone say something. But it's nice because this is a group of creators who are that serious and dedicated. You don't hear anyone talk about anything sideways. Mm-hmm. And how often can you say 35 people in a room together all agree? All for one purpose. You don't hear that. You just don't. Because these are people from all different backgrounds. No one's the same. Yet we're all believing this one thing. And that's power. I'm sorry, but if you want to talk about something powerful, that's it right there. All these different people coming together.
I'm gonna pop in here with a real quick bump. It's from Mobile Edge, so tune in. We'll be back in about 30 seconds.
Check it out. MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and contemporary, edgy designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go.
Find them at mobileedge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on. Hey Geek Insiders, Mobile Edge has a special coupon code for our dedicated listeners. Get 25% off your Mobile Edge gear using coupon code GEEK25. That's GEEK25. Geek out.
All right, and we're back with Geek Speak, and that was Mobile Edge. Remember that coupon code expires December 31st, and we might have another coupon code coming up. But today we are sitting with George Dawkins II and Rob Andersin. We are talking about Comic Book School and the Creators Connection and, the collaborative journey as far as creating comic books, getting it done, pivoting, because they really had to. When they were talking about a bricks and mortar thing, and I was there when they canceled New York Comic Con, and Rob was just sad.
I was sad too.
There were a lot of people that were sad. For me, it was like New York Comic Con was not in my even on my radar this year. I was looking forward to MegaCon. Was it MegaCon?
Yeah, and that one was like a gut punch to me too.
That was a hard one for me, because it was like, if they don't cancel in like 2 days, we're gonna have this event, and then they canceled.
I threw up over that one. That's how bad that one was. Like, it physically made me ill, because we should have been able to have it, because our numbers weren't bad yet. We would have been fine. We actually didn't have bad numbers for about 4 weeks later. And that was when everyone from the north came down, and we could have pulled it off, and they yanked it from us out of fears. And, it's one of those things where you can't do anything about it once it happens. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
It sucked.
But the fact that Buddy Scalera was able to put this together, and, you kind of alluded to it, that whatever virtual event that New York had, whether it was miscommunication, whether there just wasn't enough time to put everything together and get all of those invites out, which has happened, with Geek Insider, as far as trying to organize events like that, to pivot and just say, hey, despite this, we're going to keep going forward. That means a lot. Those are people that you want to surround yourself with, because they're going to do it no matter what. And whether you come along or not. And obviously, the sense that I'm getting is that they want you to succeed, sincerely want you to succeed. And not just because maybe, it's that sense of importance. So it's like, oh, I'm helping all of these creators. I don't feel that at all with this group.
Yeah, we're resilient, we had to be. Yeah, because this is what we love to do. We love to tell stories, and we were determined not to let 2020, stop us from doing what we love to do.
Yeah. So now tell us a little bit, because I'm not familiar with you, George. What kind of stories do you write?
Well, the work that I have out now, they're basically comic books. They're on Amazon, and I guess the more faith-based comics, because my main character is a pastor, and he becomes a vigilante in Jerusalem. And other than that, and the Flash Fiction Challenge, my work that I submitted for that, the Black Knight, those are my 2 projects that are out right now. I have other ideas in my head, but they're for the future. Right now, I'm just working on what we got right now.
So now, do you like to broaden, because you did say that you like to write in all kinds of like genres and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is Geek Insider, we love to get inside the geek.
Okay.
What are you working on now that maybe you can tease us with?
Well, that 8-page challenge project that I hinted at, that I said I wasn't able to complete because of COVID. It involves a female character. I've never done a female character before. Okay. And I had the script written and everything, but my artist, my main artist for that project, she was a teacher, and how the pandemic affected teachers. Like, she became more busy, so she wasn't able to, finish illustrating it for me. But the script is done, so if I can I could go with her or find another artist, and I can, bring that thing to life, because I still have the script. It's finished, fully written, an 8-page comic.
So, okay, now my question is, if this is the first time you've written in the female point of view, what was the deciding factor of it? Was it the story itself, or was it something else? Just maybe a challenge for you?
I don't want to reveal too much, but the inspiration for me for that story is where I'm from. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and there's a local library where I stay that I used to do volunteer work. And the character that I'm doing in that story is based off an experience I had. We did this thing, like, it was like 4 years ago. We did this thing called Superhero Day, like where I was participating and we helped the kids out. And an experience that I had from that, I use that as inspiration for this story. So I hope to, release this story and share it with you all.
Now, being that this was the first time writing in a female POV, do you have a preference? Is this something that you're going to do again?
Oh, yes, I'd love to. I have to see how, they always say the first in anything, that's the hardest part. But after that, it should be easier. Hopefully, it'll be easier for me going forward. But yeah, I really want to release this character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what would be some of the tips or tricks to get other people motivated to write? What motivates you?
Get inspiration from everything you see. TV shows, movies, reading comics, books, like Rob would prefer us to do. Read books. Get inspiration from any visible form of entertainment. Just take inspiration from everything you see. That's would be my advice. Mm-hmm. Even video games also. Like for my comic that I have out on Amazon, I got a huge inspiration from video games, particularly the Batman Arkham series. Like, I love those video games. Those games are the reason why I'm a Batman fan today. Like, that's how much those games mean to me. And it inspired me to write my comic.
All right. Let me see here. Going through comments here. Sorry. We might not be getting all of our comments from Facebook. I have a feeling.
Yeah, I was going to say that while you're looking through there. I think that there's a Facebook hiccup today.
Yeah, I noticed that when I went streaming earlier today that I wasn't getting any of the comments from. So if you are tuning in from Facebook, we apologize. We are not getting them through the StreamYard or the aggregator. And so we'll be watching the replays and reaching out to you and responding later. Let me see. Now, I should have written it down because I have a notebook right here because I had another question about the 8-page challenge. Mm-hmm. You did say that was going to launch again in January.
No, December.
December 29th.
December 29th. No, I thought that was the release of the anthology.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said I messed up. Dyslexic going. I thought you were talking about that. The new one we're already working on, believe it or not. We've already begun to lay the groundwork. As one team finishes that off, the rest of us have been getting together, kind of talking about how we can restructure the next year and bring it to life. So there's never a bad point to actually jump on board, because then you could be part of what we're creating, the groundwork for what's new, The next meeting we have will be one that really shouldn't be with new people, because you wouldn't know what you're talking about, because we're literally going live. You guys should be watching it instead and learning what we just did this cycle, sort of like today, and then jumping on for the next cycle, because the next meeting we have is literally to launch the project. But right after that, we're even talking about what I would like to see happen, and we've started to talk about this, is just a little bit of a different organization next year. So you might even have different groups meeting at different times, depending on who you are. There might be a writers group. I know Ari's talked about creating a writers group where writers can get together. Even artists maybe get together. We definitely want it to be inviting, and we want to take it to the next level. And everything that we're doing there, we're doing, me and Meredith over at Terraform, with our Continuum project, which is a lot of the stuff I learned from Comic Book School and stuff I learned from doing the Advocator and being an advocate. I've put that into doing this. So it's like two different versions of the same thing. and I'm part of both, and I get to bring what I learned from each side to the other, making both better.
So is there any insight as to whether or not it's going to be an 8-page challenge, or, because George alluded to the fact that there was like a flash fiction challenge as well, or are these things kind of ongoing, maybe on a calendar where there might be an 8-page and then maybe a couple months later there's the flash fiction, or even maybe an artist challenge?
Well, I believe the Flash Fiction Challenge was made more out of necessity because since the pandemic hit, a lot of people couldn't finish their 8-page comic. And like I said, it's easier for an artist to illustrate one image instead of a whole 8-page comic. So I feel like that was made more out of necessity. I'm thankful for it because that's how I'm able to be in this anthology. But I believe going forward, I think Rob would know better than me about what we plan to do going forward because I'm just a participant. But I'm looking forward to what we do because I enjoy this. Like I want to keep making stuff for this project, for this group.
Right. I mean, but if a flash fiction challenge has actually prompted writers to participate, I don't see that as a bad thing. That might be something that's incorporated later.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Well, like I said, right now we're at the building blocks, so nothing's off the table right now. Right. There is a theme that's being tossed around, and we're trying to figure out exactly how that theme could work. And no, I won't be telling you what the theme is.
Me neither. I know what it is too. I ain't saying it either.
Yeah, we're not there yet to publicly talk about it. We will, though. Just like, if we bring up the comic book school, honestly, you'll see, and I'll drag it up right now. This was a very public thing that we did for the most part. Our meetings were only about the people involved in it. And that's to keep trolls out. And, let's be honest, there's a lot of trolls in life. Meredith knows that really well right now. There are a lot of people who come in, try to make things what they're not. And it's sad, but you do have to monitor about that. But here we go. Look at this. Look at how, and a lot of credit to Erin. Erin was on our breakfast brunch just the other weekend talking about this. Look at how meticulous this was. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't following any of this. I was in the back scrambling, doing a dozen things at once because I'm so used to doing the project. I didn't need these prompts, but there was nothing I thought better than this. Look at how she boiled this down. And you remember me and Meredith were talking to her behind the scenes. I remember her talking about I was trying to schedule time for mistakes, but I didn't know how to name it. Do you name it mistake time? Because she figured there'd be that moment where there'd be problems. And, that's just how involved she was to this. And this is credit to Buddy letting us watch. We watched creators come in. I'm not going to divulge who, but creators' names you would know in the industry come in and talk to us about their process, talk to us about how they're creating. We had people talking to us about how to market better. This is not just a, hey, let's all hang out and talk about making a comic while never making a comic. You see a ton of that on Facebook, where people are just sitting around bad talking all the things that they want to do. That's not what this is. This is a group of positivity that is always challenging, always talking about how we can do things better, and literally giving you step by step. Look at that. How to plot your 8-page comic book. I don't need that help. I look at that as a step I don't need. But Meredith, when you're starting off, this is a huge moment. I don't need this because I spent 10 years studying it. But someone who's had 10 years, I would send you. Remember I said, Meredith, you have to be involved in this because the way they handle it, it really gives you a different perspective. So despite not needing it, guess what? I showed up to every one of these. Every time someone was writing something, I read it because I never let that ego fact of I know what I'm doing to stop me. Just because I wasn't necessarily following the same playbook. And of course, I was working with, at points, 8 different artists. In the end, it was 12 with all the revolving door stuff. So this would not have worked the same way. I had, at times, 5 pages being made at the same exact moment, at the same exact time, but 5 very different people asking 5 very different questions because each one was allowed a very different art style. So, when I was doing it that way, there's no actual board you can put up. There's too many variables. But when you're working on your standard comic and you're going from the beginning to the end, especially when you're new, and an 8-page one at that, this is it. This is like your, for lack of a better term, your Bible to almost follow and go through when it comes to comic book creating, because it really nails it. Plot revisions, character designs. Although I did argue the character design should have been 2. not 4.
Yeah.
That's the brilliance of our group, is that we all sat around and talked, well, I don't know, I would have seen it back, because sometimes, and I don't know about you guys, but I have to see the character to know what the character's doing.
Yeah.
I have to understand the character. I can't do a character design that late in it unless I'm giving it to my artist, and I trust my artist. And I always have a vision of what it should have been. And you'll be at the meeting, and when they do something better, you're like, screw them. Mine still great. And when they don't do something better, that's when you start trickling in your ideas of it. And you go, well, what if we did this? And meanwhile, like, evilly, you knew what you wanted the whole time. You just let them have a try first. And yes, that's what we do as writers. We absolutely, well, what if we just added a hat right there? And what if his ears were bigger? We're slowly making you make our character, and you think you did it for us. That's a good writer. They know how to use words to motivate people. But I mean, just look at this. I mean, this is it. I'll tell you the truth. Don't tell Buddy this, but when we're doing things with Continuum, I'm going to be sending it to this page and be like, you see how they did this? This is what I want you to do. You know, this is how I want you to follow it. Have you done step 4? No, you haven't. Don't come back to me till you have step 4 done.
Yeah, that's one thing that I loved about this whole thing, the educational aspect of it. Like, I'm still, like, I feel like I'm still coming up in this. I'm still kind of new to all this, the comic business and the process of making a comic. Even though I have 4 issues out, I still feel like I'm a newbie in a way. And the educational aspect of this whole project, I loved it. And going to what Rob said, I feel like my job as a writer is to describe, when it comes to character designs, describe the characters the best way I can, the way how I see it. Even when comparing it to other things, little things, other characters, things like that. Just however I can bring out the character I see in my head, how I can bring it out of the artist I'm working with.
You know what's really nice about that, from what I'm seeing, is that new people who are coming in, I mean, sure, there are a ton of books out there that you can reference to, but when you have kind of a step-by-step guide, you're getting, you're coming in as a student, maybe, after you've been through the process at least once, maybe twice, you become a peer, and then you become a mentor, and it's that whole cyclical thing. And for Rob, you to show up and stuff like that, sure, maybe this is old hat for you, but as the mentor and a guide to what this whole process is, and finding new to you creators, that should be something that's kind of exciting, that keeps it fresh, I think.
Oh, there's nothing about that. Like I said, this is continued education to me. Anytime I think that, like, if my mind looks at a panel list and I go, oh, I know that, I don't need to learn it, then I circle it and I make sure I go to that panel. I actually prioritize that one because I let my ego think that I had known enough, and I'll sit in there, and there ain't been a year I ain't sat in a panel like that. I didn't hear a different point of view that I never heard before that made me smarter. Not a year goes by, I haven't not met someone. Like, I'm looking at these pictures and I see my friends in here. Like, I'm literally picking out people I know in here that are now people that I know and will continue to know the rest of my life, because this is us right here in the actual events. And you see people asking questions. You hear Jax in the background being a crazy kid. And he's been at these with me. Let me tell you, Jax has gone to these shows with me. There's Arielle, and there's Buddy too, by the way, if anyone doesn't know what Buddy Scalera looks like.
That's Buddy, yeah.
And Arielle is part of our challenge right there. And, for those who don't know, I've gone to these in a wheelchair after major back surgery. That's how important it was to me. And I'll tell you, in a year where everyone kept looking like I had poison all over me, because when you're hurt, everyone doesn't want to touch you like you're going to give them cooties. But he was the only person who, like, when I was getting up out of the chair, he's like, you don't have to get up, sit down, relax. And he treated me like nothing was wrong with me. When I had to start learning to walk again with a cane, never saw the cane, always saw me. And that's something you don't forget. And he was always positive. And he didn't take it easy on me. He didn't see the wheelchair and go, oh, this is good. No, he looked at it. He's like, okay, this is what I want you to do next time. And I like that. I like going somewhere where someone told me what to do next, because he wasn't discounting me. And he's like, okay, you're here. Go here. Now go here. Now go here. And, there was a moment where he had said something very flattering in front of a lot of people in our group about the writing skill I had. And I can't tell you how powerful those moments are, because the journey you go on with people, and that's what this group is. it's a journey through creators, and we're all watching each other's lives. We've seen each other get married. We've seen each other struggle and learn from each other. And like you see all these different creators who show up and who are talking both the professional. Of course, you should be able to name some of those people right there on the stage. I'm not going to tell you who, because once again, it's better if you learn on your own. Try to figure out who these people are, get involved, go to comic book school, and find out who the guest speakers were that year, because it's important. But here you go, learning, people talking to each other. And this is 2018. I cannot stress to you enough how many people in this class now were now in Scout Comics, now in Source Point Press Comics. This is a generation of creators that have been brought together by Buddy Scalera and what he does. And you get creators who come every year and who haven't made a comic book. And every year, Buddy looks at them and goes, okay, maybe next year. He never looks at them like, okay, you're never going to do it. And it's good, because I was one of those for a couple of years. I was so busy in work. I was working out, trying to be in WWE. I wanted to be a wrestler. And
really? Cool.
Yeah, I was physically training to the point I could do the moves for the most part, but I wanted to be bigger.
I'm a huge fan, huge WWE fan.
I decided, this is before Daniel Bryan even, just as Daniel Bryan was coming up, he came out the year after. I decided I need to be a hulking mass, so I actually got myself to be able to bench press 425 pounds.
Wow.
I was scary big to the point where I couldn't move anymore, and I actually had to start cutting back down because I was like, big guy, no touchy.
Got you. Wow.
You know, like I would step on something because I was used to being like a $125, $150 most of my life. I was actually underweight most of my life. So I could jump on boxes and go through things. I got to the point where I jumped on a box. I was like, crack! You know, like Grimlock smash. Things exploded out of the side. And people were like,
I pick things up and put
exactly.
them down.
Like people started looking at me like I was stupid. Like I remember going to the panels like sometimes with because I'm a little smaller than I am now. Meredith's always like, you're not small. And I'm like, to me, I am.
Oh.
But I would go to the panels and people would be looking at me like, you make comic books? And I'm like, yes, these are just muscles. Don't be afraid of them, comic book people. You literally read books about them. Why is this intimidating?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it shouldn't be a surprise. It really shouldn't.
But, you know, all the comic book creators don't expect someone to, like, you know, veins popping out of their arms to be like, yeah, so I create books about a farting elephant, and it teaches morals. Like, very common. So, you know, and it's
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so you just go on the journey and you love it. And there's Buddy handing free stuff out from a sponsor because he gets sponsors that are cool. The man is sweating. He's hot. He's moving around, still getting it done. Still talking about it. Editors on editing, one of the better panels I had. This really made me start to appreciate the fact that people didn't understand what an editor's job was. Being in that room, just hearing what people were saying about it made me realize people didn't understand what an editor's job was. And they're literally telling people what an editor is. And I thought that was like basic, but now like 2 years later, now removed from this panel, I'll tell you, a lot of people fight you on editors. I don't need an editor. I know about editing. Meanwhile, I could sit 3 editors down and have each one of them tell me how to edit my book differently. And that tells you what editing is. It's a style, it's your approach. And we did it live, me and Meredith, George, the other 2 weekends ago when Erin was with us. We called up my actual project because there were a few edits I had gotten an email. I was untangling my email chain and had found this thing where I was suddenly 2 days late. And I don't like being late. Meredith knows that. I don't miss deadlines. So I'm in the middle of the Sunday brunch relettering my comic now. And I didn't miss a beat. But at one point, I'm like, hey, Chuck, I got to ask you an editing question. So I throw it to him. And then Meredith's like, well, bring it up. Let's do it right now. And we're sitting there. And I found out this thing called an M-dash. My life
blew his mind.
I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about, an M-dash? I thought someone was being funny. There's an actual dash called M, and I'm like Googling it. Like, no, they're screwing with me. They're playing with me. There's an M-dash. And I'm like, my whole life's different. I was like, wait, you can use a dash instead of a comma? I was like, where have you been all my life? I mean, this so many potential changes in all my scripting. I'm like, I need a minute. And I turned my camera off. And I went to the corner and contemplated everything I had just learned. And I came back and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to create now. But it was literally that. And Chuck had gone through it. And he's like, yeah, because I read some of the things to Chuck. And Chuck's like, yeah, that's Rob. You know, like he knows I'll argue about it. Yeah, they don't know you, Rob. They don't know why you'll argue why it's important. Because one of the favorite things I like to do is use capital letters to accent words.
Right.
And what people will say is, well, why not just capitalize the whole word? Because then you sound like you're screaming the word. It's the difference between having a capitalized, the cat in the hat to the cat.
That's little stuff you have to watch. Yeah, I know what you mean. Exactly.
And I look at it like a script. If you ever read a script for an actor, they actually put little things in there for accentuations. And I think I said that word right. So they do that on purpose. And I was like, how cool would that be to put that in the comics? No one thinks it's cool. No one. My fans don't tolerate it. They're fine with it. They're okay with it. I've had a couple fans. Hey, is this why you do that? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, okay, that's what I thought. That's cool. That's cool. Like, no one's like, that's groundbreaking. But I got my fans used to it, so they're okay with it. But every time an editor looks at it, why would you capitalize this word? I'm emphasizing it. So then Chuck's like, have you ever thought about italicizing? Is that, am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, Chuck, where have you been? You've been editing my book 5 years, and you've never told me I could use that. I thought the word was always to give the reader importance. I didn't realize the character might be singing. My whole world's changed. So even now, like to Meredith's point, we're in this. I've released books. I've won awards for the books. It's picked up by Scoot Comics under Scout, and I'm still learning about this. And we're still changing. We're changing fonts. We're changing even our little art things. One person figures one thing out. We're all like, oh, that's a good idea. And the next thing you know, there's 10 books that are using that. It's reality. It's like a tree of knowledge that we all try to spread the leaves to everyone that we can throughout our career. Because we all got taught by someone. We all came up with someone. We all got inspired by someone. But once again, you would not see me on this program. Geek Insider would not have a comics book wing if it were not for Buddy Scalera's panel on this. I might still have become a comic book creator, but I might have come up in the harder groups that were literally being like frat houses, kind of beating people up as they came up. And then you come up and you think that's the way to do it. So you now got to punch down because that's how you came up and that's your right now. It's the problem with doing that stuff. That's the problem with all that superiority. So even if you don't become like them, you walk away from it and you never want to deal with it again because you were offended by it. So you never go to fix it. Buddy's coming in and fixing it. That's not how comics were back in the 60s, 50s and 40s and 30s. That superiority thing came in the 80s and 90s, if you know your comics history. And it's dangerous. No one's better than anyone else. I want to hear what George's stories are because George is going to be the only person to ever tell me that story unless he makes a Star Wars story. And then it's legal stuff, whether or not I could read it, like it, but I would tell George, don't put it out. You'll get in trouble.
Yeah, I'm not touching Star Wars. That's too big a franchise.
I know Meredith got in trouble. I heard today. She got cease and desist. I don't even have a cease and desist in my record.
Oh, wow. I'm not touching it. I'm not touching that. Yeah.
I think Meredith froze on this.
Oh, for real?
It happens every so often.
Oh, okay. But yeah. I would never mess with something as big as Star Wars. I'd never do that.
Yeah, so you can't play around with those things. You can't mess with the copyrights are so important. Here we are. I think Meredith's back.
Yeah.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to text you and go, oh crap, I don't know what happened with my internet. But yeah, no, I did. The last thing I heard was I did get a cease and desist, and I think it was like 11.
And I've never gotten one. And I'm like, how did I not get one? And she got one. Like, she's above. Not that you want one, but like just the fact that I've gotten the rejection letters. I actually have a rejection letter, not even kidding, right behind my computer. And I look at it all the time. I look at my rejection letters. But I'll tell you, I got a rejection letter from Image right before my property got picked up by Scoot. A few months before it, we got a rejection letter. But it was weird. It was a very nice rejection letter. Someone actually wrote it to me. So this was something that they had contemplated, and I guess they just felt it didn't fit, but they wanted to be encouraging. They said, we looked at your project. It's a high-quality product. And I'm reading it like, oh, crap. Like, they're putting me down gently. So either they're coming to kill me so they can have my character. So for a couple of nights, I slept with one eye open. Or they just couldn't figure it in Image. And I was like, yeah, I don't see a lot of kid stuff in Image. Like when I look at Image, I don't think kid-friendly.
Yeah.
So it was what it was. But yeah, so we got to hear the cease and desist, Meredith. What did you do?
Okay, so we were in junior high, probably sixth or seventh grade. And my group of friends and I, we were just Star Wars fanatics. And there was Indiana Jones. And we created this whole story with them, kind of meeting each other. And you know, it was a lot of fun. We wrote this story. We used to pass this notebook around to each other. And you had a page. You could write a page, and that was it. Of course, I had, you know, you have the one friend who has to finish the story idea. So her penmanship got really small towards the end so that she could finish her idea. It's like, no, that's not the point of it. You write regular and then you pass it on. And who knows what the next person is going to do, where they're going to take the story. It was really challenging and a lot of fun. Then we took some of that story and we created our own comic book. And these are memories that are popping up from my youth that have long been repressed. And we made a comic book, and we were so proud of our work that we made a Xerox copy. That was Xerox when we were using the paper, and sent it off to George Lucas and Steven Spielberg because we're just super fans.
Wow!
And we got a cease and desist.
And the reason they got a cease and desist, this is a little known history that doesn't get told a lot. The reason it was given a cease and desist because it was still better than The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
It probably was. I don't have a copy of it, and I wonder if my friend Sheila still has it. But
Unless it was The Last Jedi. Meredith, did you write The Last Jedi without knowing it?
Oh.
No, you know what? It was more like we wrote Spaceballs. I mean, that was it. When we saw Spaceballs in the theater, we were like, "Holy shit! They stole our writing! What the hell?"
There you go. Now you know. Damn you, Mel Brooks. Damn you. Stealing Meredith's idea at 11.
Yeah, crushed my dream. But no, it was one of those things. Now, George, I want to ask you about the editing process because you're a writer. I think my ego gets in the way a lot of times, and part of it is budget, where I don't want to pay for an editor because I write and I also edit. But it's kind of like that whole doctors don't operate on their family because they're too close to it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm like, nope, gonna do it anyway because I can't afford Chuck, you know, whatever the case might be. Do you find that you edit your work, or do you let your baby go to somebody else?
I feel like I definitely edit my work. I majored in English. Actually, this past May, I graduated this past May from UNC Charlotte. And I feel like I rely on my English major to help me with my writing, especially when it comes to editing. For this challenge, for my flash fiction piece, I think Ari, he did the editing for each person. Am I right, Rob?
There's a group of like 4 people. So Ari was definitely one of them. And he was actually in some of the pictures, actually. I should have pointed him out. But yeah, he was major part of the back. He was the one who came up with the actual flash fiction challenge himself too.
Yeah. So he definitely did the editing on my end when it came to the flash fiction challenge, and it really helped me. And I got shout out to Ari. Thank you for doing that, man.
Does ego get in the way at all, though? You know, when somebody comes back and says, you see some changes that you need?
No, not really, because I'm not anybody right now. Like, I'm willing to take help from anyone, especially from like people like Rob and Buddy who like have been through this. Like, they have more experience than me. So yeah, there's no ego here.
Good to know. Again, with the writing process, a lot of times for me it's budget. It's not that I mind getting feedback from people if it's going to make it better, you know, because again, sometimes we're obviously attached to the things that we're creating, and we don't want anybody saying that it's an ugly baby. So there's a certain amount of vulnerability that people don't like to put themselves through, you know, and I get that. And I guess, you know, for me, it's one of those things where I have to, it's really hard for me to let go. It's really hard for me to let go, but I'm open to hearing things. And if it makes sense to me, and maybe that's just the way my brain is, if it makes sense, if you can tell me why, and give me a good reason, and not just, I told you so, which I've seen people do. I've seen editors just say, make the changes or it's not moving forward, you know, and there's no dialogue there. where they allow the creator to come back and argue the point and say, no, I did it that way on purpose. And so that, I think with Comic Book School, it seems to be more open and collaborative, more like a conversation rather than an end all be all.
Yeah, I know what you mean when it's hard to let go. When you put so much thought and effort into something and told, just let it go for something better. I know what you mean.
Yeah, for me, it's a gladiator match. You have to prove. I don't care. I'll take my stuff and walk. I will never be talked to unless they own the characters. Then it's different. Then you are.
Yeah.
You work with people who it's their characters, and they come back and they go, I don't like that. We're not using it. You just go, okay, and you let it roll off your back. But if it's your characters, the reason I call it a gladiator match, prove to me why your way works better. Don't just tell me. I want to hear it, because 90% of the editing process for comics is dialogue. And a lot of people in comics get dialogue horribly wrong. And when you talk to them, especially new creators, they go, well, the editor told me this. And very often they're using new editors. And what editors do is they go in and they look at it. This isn't grammatically correct. When was the last time you heard someone speak grammatically correct? Really think about how in our language we do not speak correctly. We're not elegant. We're not just sitting there and taking out our prose within our actual verbiage, because that doesn't work. We'd sound like we're stereo instructions. We use words, and those words have accents on them of importance, and it's the way we say them, the sarcasticness. See, to me, also italic was always sarcastic. So I would use that for sarcasm, because I thought, like, ha, humor. And then you have that argument with your editor, and they're like, oh, if you're using it for that, I could see that, because in that moment, putting it there. So now I can't use that to emphasize a word, can I? And they're like, no, I guess you can't. So all of that matters, and you don't get that without a conversation. If you get an editor who's like, look, this is just the end all and be all, you finish your project, and you don't sign on to do more. That's the best thing I can say. And if it's your project, and they're like, oh, then it's not going forward. No, sir, it's going forward. It just might not be going forward with you, man. And you address it that way. That's my opinion for what it's worth. Take it or leave it.
And I think that there's the value, that little time that we had, Rob, when we took a page and we had Erin and we had Chuck in there, and seeing that process, that dialogue, I think is so important. I hope it's a component that is going to be added into Comic Book School. Because
we definitely talked about it. We talked about just doing it, me and you, Meredith, just taking, I said I'd write a script and I'd let it be butchered. I would never use my first draft, which I do give my friends really close to me the chance to read the first draft, which is never really the first draft. It's usually the first draft they get to read. My first draft looks like alien text because of the dyslexia. Like I've had Grammarly like crash and be like, no, motherfucker, no thank you.
No, I am done with you. Here's that fool again. Oh my gosh.
It's cat. C-A-T. How hard is cat? I don't know how, but he got A wrong. I don't know how he did it, but he got it wrong. He used the French one. Why would you use the French A? That's Grammarly in me. I always kid that Chuck every Friday night when we're in the middle of working on projects at the bar drinking, because he's worked with me all week, and I ask all the questions, and he knows it too. He knows the minute he hands it to me, because I'll get him on a video too. Like I won't even just do it back and forth, and I'm like, "Hey, Chuck," he's like, "What now?" And I'll explain it to him, and some of the times he's like, "Damn, that does make sense." I can't argue it. I would tell you that people might not like it, but it's not grammar. You're just doing it, aren't you? You're not even letting me finish the sentence, are you? You just already did it your way, didn't you, Rob? The minute you said it works.
But that's the conversation, and I think having that out in the open and seeing how an example of the creator and an editor coming together and hashing those things out and saying, you know what, as the creator, you still have a voice, even though the editor might have recommendations or suggestions and things, or downright changes, and to see that process. I think that's really cool and very important, a very important educational tool.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's what Buddy does. I mean, we're sitting around, he's showing these things in the background. And you're right. We do have to bring it more forward so people, even fans, should kind of see what we go through. I think fans are fascinated when they realize people just don't make comics over the weekend. Like there's a process. Like it takes a bit of time. There are definitely people, and we're not all Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby could write a 32-page comic book on his lunch break. You know, that's the type of guy who Jack Kirby was.
Yeah, I mean, in my own process right now, you know, I showed Rob the first page. I showed it up on the live stream that I did earlier today, and that was a font. Just finding a font was a journey. You know, what is going to look good? What makes sense as far as aesthetically speaking? You know, when it's out on the page, you know, then the size of the font, and other issues that might be there, like that font isn't perfect. There are a couple of things like, do I have to go in there and replace every capital I at the beginning of the sentence? I think I'm going to. To make it, you know, correct so that it looks right, because even though I like the font itself, there are some things that need to be tweaked.
And then you'll find the one guy who knows the two different fonts, and they'll tell you, well, you know, that's against the rules. And I always say this to people, especially on social media: show me the rules. Like, like I know the 10 Commandments, I can find the Constitution. Where are your fucking rules? I don't see them anywhere. I've looked.
It's true. It's true. So just that was days going through and finding fonts and stuff, and go, okay, you know, and having all the different sound effects and stuff going, okay, all the sound effects are not the same, therefore they need a different font, but they need to be in the same family, and it has to make sense, it has to look good with the other art, and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, I'm on another learning curve. And you know, so like this first draft is, you know, I'll send it to Rob and a couple other people and just say, okay, I need the feedback. Where can this be improved? Because even though this might be my first book, I don't want that to be the excuse that it's crap either. Oh, you know, that I can use that as an excuse. I don't want that to be an excuse. If my name's going to be on it, then I'm going to do my damnedest to educate myself and put out the best product that I can at this point in time.
And Meredith is key. Someone rip apart someone else's lettering, and then accidentally I had opened up a file with their lettering in it, and she saw me rip it apart until we realized who did the lettering, and we were like, oh, isn't that funny? Like they just ripped someone else's, and the other person's lettering, there were a couple of mistakes, but it was nothing. It was like those, again, it was like the rule police. Oh, you shouldn't do, like the whole new rule, you can only have certain letters in a page. That's not true. If you can make it work, make it work. Go back and read comics from back in the day when they used to use words to tell stories with art, not just art. Like now the comics try to rely so much on art, they forget to tell a story. The good art writers are still out there forcing, and you can see that they're still telling stories. They're going over art. They tell their artists too, look, I have to put panels here. I was like, I don't care what you do. You can make something beautiful. Words are going right over it. I don't care what you do. But then you get the occasion where you're like, damn, they outdid me. That's actually good art. I'm going to have to redo something. I'm going to have to play around. I'm going to play around, get this to work. But like, you know, for the most part, I think most people are just, you know, everyone's got their opinion, and too many people make their opinion facts. And that's where the problems come in. Don't make your opinion facts. Be open, and be open to downloading it on December 29th as the Creator Connections Panel 1 goes live, and it will be available on comicbookschool.com exclusively. So we will see you on December 29th. I know George has got to get going today. We told him we'd only keep him until now so he can get out of here. I appreciate him spending time. So we wanted to get as many people as we could to educate everyone and tell you what this is. This is a big deal. And next year, we hope that you will all join us with it. Go ahead, Meredith, your show to end.
Okay. Well, George, first of all, before we go, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook at The Desert Fox Comic. That's my Facebook page. All my other information should be on there. I also have an Instagram, and I guess you can email me as well. But it's slipping because I'm losing it right now because of all the other stuff I have. I've been so focused on the anthology, I'm forgetting my own stuff. But yeah, you can find it all on The Desert Fox Comic on Facebook.
Yeah, as creators, we can only pay attention to the project we're working on right now.
Yeah, right now, yeah, this anthology is the main thing on my mind right now.
It's get the anthology done.
Yeah, thank you all for having me.
Thanks. Everyone knows where I am, Meredith. Don't make me say who I am.
Fine, that's fine. Comic Book Advocates Network, Geek Insider. Make sure that you head over to the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button for both, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks, guys. Geek out.
You.
At Geek Insider, we foster relationships with those in the geek sphere so we can give our audience the insider view of entertainment, tech, and more.